Hey, welcome to Wisdom Wednesday with Pastor Josh. Wisdom is the quality or state of being wise, as knowledge of what is true, right, coupled with just judgment as to action, sagacity, discernment, and insight. We're going to look at what that means today on this edition of Wisdom Wednesday. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Wisdom Wednesday podcast. Hey, I want to talk to you about investing today. And, this is really a hard topic right now because I know the tendency for a lot of us is to want to pull back when we see that things are being taken away. When we see the toilet paper being taken off the shelves, when we see the hand sanitizer, and when we begin to see supplies and things that we once thought were so easy and we never thought about how easy or hard it was to get such things. When we see these things becoming harder to get, there's something inside of us that says, no, I can't allow myself to be without. And so we really run and we try to figure out ways to get everything that we feel like we have to have because we don't know when we'll need it. Which that's a whole nother podcast maybe to talk about where all that comes from. But this desire to preserve our lives like that, it's crazy, but we can become so fleshly so quick. And so I want to talk to you about investing because I think more than ever, maybe we need to hear this. That when times like this happen, we need to press forward, not fall backwards. We need to even be more sacrificial in our lives and what we're called to do, and our giving, and our time, and our energy, and whatever we need to invest in. We need to be willing to invest. Because it's in times like this that it matters most. So I want to read a portion of scripture from Ecclesiastes, which the book of Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon. It's really actually called The Preacher, this book is, and because he's really just talking about life. He's talking to us about life and the perspective that we should have. And in chapter 11, it has an interesting portion here. It's verses 1 through 6 that I'm going to read here. It says, send your bread on the surface of the water, for after many days you may find it. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you don't know what disaster may happen on the earth. Isn't that the truth? It says, if the clouds are full, they will pour out rain on the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. One who watches the wind will not sow. That's an interesting statement. It says, and the one who looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you don't know the path of the wind, or how bones develop in the womb of a pregnant woman, so you also don't know the work of God who makes everything. So in the morning, sow your seed, and at evening do not let your hand rest, because you don't know which will succeed, whether one or the other, or if both of them will be equally good. What an interesting portion of scripture. Saying that, hey, if you look at the wind, you're not going to sow. Man, isn't that the truth? If we look at everything around us that's going on, it kind of reminds me, it's a little bit of that foreshadowing of Jesus and Peter on the water, right? You remember the story where Peter is called by Jesus to get out of the boat. And Peter kind of elicited that conversation and said, hey, if this is you, Jesus, call me out on the water. How many of you have ever done that? Like, Lord, if this is you, speak to me. Help me to see, what's going on. And then I'll obey you. But how many of you know that really we're kind of hoping that he wasn't going to call us out on the water? But Peter gets called out on the water, so he steps out on the water. And he's doing well. He's walking on the water, which no one besides Jesus has ever done. Peter's human, right? Now we know that Jesus is fully man and fully God. But in this moment, it's like, Peter, you're not fully God. So you're definitely fully man and kind of an ignorant man at times. Stick your foot in your mouth kind of, all the time. Definitely imperfect. And Jesus is perfect. So we see the contrast there. So Peter, all of a sudden, he's walking on the water, and he lifts his eyes to look at the waves and the wind. And what happens? He sinks. It's the same thing. When we look at the wind and the waves around us, we're not going to invest. We're not going to step out and say, okay, Lord, I trust you. Because really, let's be honest. Investment is proportionate to our trust. So we will only invest as far as we trust. For instance, if you have somebody who's done wrong with you, maybe they've asked you for money before and you've given them money, and then they've used that money to go and do their own thing, and it feels like they took that money and they abused it, right? They abused your investment in them. It's harder to give to that person again, right? It's harder for us to say, oh, well, here you go. Like, yeah, I know, this time it'll be better. Many times when we see people invest poorly, it doesn't necessarily make us trust them anymore, right? Because investment, when we invest in something and we see a return, it builds up trust. It builds up the ability to say, okay, well, I can trust more. So my challenge is how much are we investing? Are you giving of your time? One of the things I've noticed is that we've talked a lot about physical distancing and social distancing and how hard that's been, because we're all social creatures, right? We are meant to be in community. We are meant to live out the one another's. And so it's hard for us to not do that. But yet when push comes to shove and we're given an opportunity to reach out and do something, spend our time for someone else or whatever, many times we find ourselves not willing to invest our time, which is one of the most valuable things that we can invest, or our energy. Right? There's so much going on right now that we can find ourselves more depleted than ever and with less to give. And even finances. Many people have lost jobs. Many people are struggling financially. And so at this time, can we really say, oh, well, just invest and give more? Yeah, we can. Because in these moments, we know that when we have less money, it's easier for us to hold on to what we have, right? Because we don't want to lose it. We don't want to lose what we have. But Jesus told us that if we try to save our lives, we'll lose them. And you say, well, that doesn't have anything to do with money. I think it has everything to do with everything. It has to do with our time, our energy, our finances, our way of thinking. It has everything to do with everything. Because everything we have should be given over to the Lord, right? That's what we're all looking to live for. We're wanting to live to such a point that when Jesus calls us to lay down whatever, we're willing to do it. Or at least that's been my prayers, that Lord, lead me to the point where I'd be willing to lay down everything. Hopefully that's been your prayer too. I know it's a scary thing, but like I said before, the level of our investment is proportionate to our level of trust. And so I want to encourage us today that what we have, we're called to invest. Really? Let's just break it down like this. What we have, we're called to trust the Lord with, right? We're called to let Him lead. We're called to trust Him with every part of our lives. And that even means our bank account, means our calendar, it means our strength, right? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so this has been really a challenge for us to invest. What is it that God is calling you to invest in, and do you trust Him enough to do it? Do you trust Him enough to say, Lord, I want to invest where you're calling me to invest, because I know it's important for me to trust you. At the very end of the day, that's what it comes down to. I know you're calling me to trust you, and so therefore, I'm going to invest, because when I invest, I know that when I cast my bread out on the water, like Ecclesiastes says, eventually that's going to come back, and I'm going to have an opportunity to invest and trust you again. And as I do that, it's going to build my muscle. It's going to build my strength, my investment muscles, my trust muscles, and then it's going to increase my ability to trust more. And so I just encourage you with that. What do you need to trust the Lord with? How do you need to invest this week? Thanks for joining me today.